ahead and get started. And to do that, I'm going to turn it over to someone who I have come to admire greatly because of her work in this community. Andrea Moore, I met first at Middle Tiger Community Center. She was serving as executive director there. And then through our work together in the United Way, I have gotten to know her better and her passion for this community. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, who currently serves on our Women United Advisory Board, as well as our Advocacy Committee. So great merge of the two things. So Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this program today and learning hopefully some new tips and skills. You know, as Maria indicated, I serve on the Women United Advisory Board as well as the Advocacy Committee for the United Way of the Piedmont. And my number one reason for wanting to be involved in these two leadership positions has been because of this issue that we're here to talk about today, and how much it matters to me to spread the word about cliff effects in particular, and more generally about, you know, policy changes that can make a huge impact on families in our community that are struggling. And so I'm very excited to be part of it and to learn what I can learn here today as well. I will tell y'all just a little bit of background experience from the time that I spent working in the nonprofit world. You know, one of the struggles that we saw families facing as they were trying to improve their lives and having a desire to work, a desire to better their family circumstances, and hitting up against that wall where if they were able to get a better job and get a better income, that suddenly they might find themselves losing some of the benefits that made that work possible. And I remember one particular young woman who had 2 small children who lost her child care vouchers for those children because she got a small raise at her job. And so the 50 cents an hour or something, whatever it was not a lot, that tipped her over where she was no longer eligible for those ABC vouchers that were $300 a week for child care for 2 preschool children. And to put a parent in that situation where they cannot afford to work or cannot afford to make a better income, because we penalize them for that by having policies that just drop people off at a cliff, to use the terminology, instead of helping ease them into a better situation. And so I'm really excited about the United Way taking on this issue as an advocacy issue, both in terms of educating our membership and our public, our supporters about it, and also in terms of advocating for some systemic and policy changes to help people in our community. So thank you all for being here. And I'm handing it over to Heather Lothar, correct?
Thank you guys so much for being here with us today. We certainly appreciate your time. And I have the privilege of introducing another one of our panelists, and that is Representative Henderson-Myers. So for those who might not know, let me just give you a brief introduction. So Rosalyn Henderson-Myers is a member of the South Carolina House of Representatives, serving District 31. She has served at the State House since 2017. Prior to that, she served on our Spartanburg City Council. And she was born and raised here in Spartanburg, attended USC and Tulane universities, and earned her Juris Doctorate. So she has an extensive and quite impressive legal career. She's currently an attorney with the Henderson Law Group, but previously she served as Assistant District Attorney, District Court Judge, and Assistant State Attorney General in Florida, and several other positions as well. So we are so thrilled to have you with us today, Representative Henderson-Myers, to share a little bit about, from your perspective as an elected official, why it is so important that you hear from the people in your district. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me first start out by telling you how actually a bill becomes an act, and then I will get into the advocacy part. But usually a bill is filed or pre-filed, and pre-filed is there's a certain deadline that the bill has to be filed in the fall before the session starts in January. So by either that method, you can file it during the session at the start or previously. And then once it's filed, it's read across the desk, and that's considered a first reading. Then it gets assigned to a committee, and then that committee will schedule it and put it on the agenda by the chairman. And then if it comes out of the subcommittee and the committee, each committee has subcommittees. So it first goes to a specific subcommittee. And then if it comes out of subcommittee, it goes to committee. And then if it gets approved by the committee, then it comes back on the House floor for a second reading and a third reading. If it gets through, if it's passed after the third reading, then it goes over to the other chamber, which in my situation, since I'm in the House, it goes over to the Senate. Then the Senate goes through that process as well with the subcommittee and the committee, and going on to the main floor to finally be passed. And then if both houses agree on the version of the bill, the same version of the bill, then it becomes ratified and goes to the governor. If not, there has to be some negotiation between both chambers to come up with a final version. If they can't, oftentimes it will be referred to a conference committee of 3 people from the House and 3 people from the Senate, and that conference committee comes up with a bill, a version that everyone can agree to, and then it gets sent to the governor. So a lot of the work goes on in the committees. If you haven't been involved in the committee process, by the time it gets back from the committee to the House, it's almost too late. If you are opposed to it, or if you want to see something in the bill that may not be in there, it's almost too late. So, but let me tell you, first of all, in terms of lobbying, getting back to the Advocacy 101 part, it's important to know who you're lobbying to and why you're lobbying that person. So if you're talking to me or another state legislator, it makes sense for, you want to make sure it's an issue for state government or a specific local issue that I might be able to help with. I'm a member of the South Carolina General Assembly, as you know, and we as General Assembly members are part-time citizen legislators, meaning that we're not in Columbia full-time, we don't get full-time pay, and basically we work at our day jobs when we're not in session. So the session runs from January, second Tuesday in January until the second Thursday in May. Of course, this year it was interrupted by coronavirus, and so we're having to meet sporadically to try to keep the government open. And in September, the second week in September, we will be revisiting our budget, since all of that has changed now because of the monies that we've had to spend for COVID-19. But just to give you an idea, the makeup is 124 members of the State House and 46 members of the Senate. And that's about 30,000 people per House district and 100,000 people per Senate district. And that was the makeup when the lines were drawn after the 2010 census, and after the 2020 census, they will be redrawn again based upon the population. And I want to stress that it's important to understand who your legislator is and what that person can do for you. And so many times, because we work in part-time and we have other jobs, it's important to set a time to meet with us. And you want to have a meeting with us, and you want to clearly ask and tell us, make the ask and tell us what you want us to do for you specifically. We have some legislative aides that help us, but we only have, for every 4 legislators, we have 1 legislative aide. So that person is pretty much, has a schedule that's pretty compact when it comes to all of us. So, it's important that you set up an appointment for us so that we can really talk to you one-on-one and give you the attention that we think that you deserve. Now, pre-COVID, that meant, meeting with us in person. You can contact us through the South Carolina StateHouse.gov website, and it has a list. And, we could have meetings in the office, but now, with COVID-19, it's easy, like we're having here now, a Zoom meeting, or if you want to talk with us on the phone. But we're pretty much working from home these days. So you can contact us remotely. And when you're advocating, you want to talk about what's important to you. As I mentioned earlier, there may be legislation that you care about. For instance, a bill that I just got through and the governor signed, we're having a ceremonial signing next week, but it was the South Carolina Lactation Support Act. It was House Bill 32, and it's now in effect. It went into effect at the end of June, and it requires employers to provide employees reasonable break times to express breast milk. And I think that bill is good because it helps working mothers to be able to go back to the workplace and be able to get break time from their employers, as long as the employer attempts to make a reasonable accommodation. And there are certain protections in there as well. And so Human Affairs Commission is doing a great job of putting out posters to the workplaces to let them know that they do have some redress if they are discriminated against, or if that break time is not allowed for them. So it's important that you come with us for things that you're concerned about. You have a conversation. And then, if there are areas that we may not agree on, then we can see if we can find common ground. Oftentimes, the way the legislature works is there's a lot of moving parts. And so there are constituent groups that come and talk with us. Agencies may come and talk with us. And there are other legislators talk to us, lobbyists talk to us. And so, we try to make sure that we meet with and talk to as many people as possible so that we can get all of the angles, so that we can, be successful in the legislation that others want us to do, and that we decide that we're going to push. And I can give you another example of how that works with the Lactation Support Act that just went through. I received quite a bit of pushback from the chair of the committee that the bill was assigned to. And so several times I asked him to put the bill on the agenda for the subcommittee to hear. And so it took about a month of me asking, and finally, one of the groups called REN, I don't know if you've ever heard of REN, helped, and they also helped me in terms of getting the language and doing the research for the bill. But REN found some priest from the archdiocese who happened to be friends with the committee chair. And so we were able to arrange a meeting with the committee chair and the priest that came from the archdiocese. And so once that meeting happened, this chair came to me the next day and said, "We're gonna put your bill on the agenda now. It's gonna be heard." And so you just have to try to figure out ways to get things done, and when you have obstacles, to move it. And so from that, then the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce got on board. The March of Dimes got on board. I mean, it was like the floodgates opened at that point. And so like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. You really have to push and advocate for your position, and we listen. And so I want to say that we have to keep the conversation going. Don't let just a request for a meeting, be a one-off. Make sure you stay in contact with us, follow up with notes, letters, emails, phone calls. and just be persistent. If there's something that you really want to get done, we will listen and you will get our attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Henderson-Myers. I'm going to pause here for just a second and remind everyone that you do have the chat panel or the Q&A panel if you have any questions. We really encourage you to utilize those. I am not seeing any at this time. So I want to thank you for your time today, Representative Henderson-Myers. I know working from home probably means you're doing more work than when you were in Columbia.
I am, and then especially with COVID-19 too, we've got some issues going on. I'm trying to get a minority health task force established here in South Carolina, and so I've been meeting with the Hospital Association, the governor's office, and other groups who are in agencies who may be interested. So that's going on, and I'm also doing some COVID-19 testing. So I've done 3 of those so far, and I've got 1 more left to go with Medical University of South Carolina.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing those resources to our community. I know we appreciate it here at United Way, and I can pretty much guarantee that your constituents appreciate it because I've seen them on social media. So,
all right. Well, thank you, and thanks again for having me. And feel free to contact me in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, so now I want to turn to Missy Spangler-House. Missy is serving on our advocacy committee starting next month here at United Way, but Missy also brings a lot of experience working with federal as well as local elected officials. She started her career at the 7th Circuit Solicitor's Office and then served as a field representative for Representative Trey Gowdy for about 8 years, and most recently was city administrator at the city of Inman. So Missy, I want to turn it over to you and just ask, you've been involved in public affairs from a very broad level with the U.S. House of Representatives, and then at a very, very local level with the city of Inman. And I'm wondering if you could just share with us some of the best ways you've seen constituents communicate with their elected officials.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Because I've sat in many meetings, and I've sat in good meetings, and I've sat in some not so good meetings. So I would love to set a stage for all of you that are wanting to advocate for any position on any level. These could be, what I've kind of come up with can be used at local, at state, or at federal level. And it's mainly just how to formulate your meeting with your elected official. First off, just make sure, and I know that if you're advocating for something, you are prepared. You know what you're talking about. You know the people involved, what the ask is. But just make sure, because especially on the federal level, when we would set appointments for Congressman Gowdy, they would be 15 minutes. We never stuck within 15 minutes, but it's very short amount of time because he wasn't in the district as often as he was in Washington. So just be prepared, and be prepared to succinctly cover your umbrella issue. So you just need to know, as you want to cover everything, but make sure it is brief and easy to understand. They are being faced with so many different types of bills. They can't know everything, so give them what they need. Be succinct. And I know Congressman Gowdy used to have people give the top 3 most important aspects of any bill to look at, or any sort of legislation that's already in place, but it may not be working the way that it should be intended to work. Look at the top 3 things, because if you start getting in, we need to change 10 things, it's going to get too much, and it's going to get overwhelmed, and it's going to kind of be, oh, that's too much. We'll just hold on a minute. So think of your top 3 asks that you want to communicate with them, and give them examples. Make sure you, in your group, we used to meet, and there would be meetings where 30 people would show up. Our office wasn't big enough for 30 people. Narrow yourself down to the main folks that either know the elected official. Any friends you can bring of any elected official will help your cause because they just feel comfortable with somebody that they already know. And then I like to tell people to bring at least one person probably that is affected by the legislation at hand so they can tell their personal story. A personal story gives them a way to connect to the issue, and they won't forget that story. That story will carry with them when they look at the legislation every time. So I'll bring someone that's affected, whether it's, let's say, juvenile diabetes, bring a child and their parent that are involved in this and have them explain why these changes or reauthorization of legislation is important. That helps a lot, but make it a small group because larger groups tend to kind of talk over each other and everybody wants a piece to say their piece, and it just gets to be a little too much. Another thing is just be willing to get to know staff. Get to know the local staff, the staff in the district office, and be willing to meet with them. Sometimes it might be months before you can meet with a congressional, a congressman or a senator. But staff is there all week long, 5 days a week, all day, and they help. They do all the background stuff. So be willing to at least start with them. Get a dialogue with those people. Those are the ones that are working to help every day on the back side of things because, the representative is just extremely busy and might be in DC, might be in meetings. So work with them, become friends with them, reach out as often as you want, send emails, give a phone call. Hey, I just wanted to catch up on this, or that's what they're there for. And I know, when I was there, the representative's office and the senator's office are super friendly. They all work together. They all kind of talk especially the district directors, they talk on a regular basis. If you can, try to get all of them at the table. If you can get the 3 district directors, you've got the 3 important people in SCO4. You've got Senator Graham, Senator Scott, and Representative Timmons. You'll have representatives from their offices there. So try to even see if they would do it. That will save you time. That will save them time. Then they can chat after the advocacy part is done and your meeting is over. That gives them a time where they're in the same room and they can kind of hash out what the plans are to move forward. But also know your representatives. Know what committees they're on. Committee is where, as Representative Henderson-Myers just explained, committee is where things start out. If you have a domestic violence issue, when Congressman Gowdy was in, he was on judiciary. That would be, he can do the most good for you there. Whereas if you have a military issue, Senator Graham would be the one to go to, or an opportunity zone issue, Senator Scott would be. Look at what their main focuses are and what their committees are, and use that to your advantage if you can. I know you're on this committee. We need to meet with you because we want to get this going. So get to know who they are, what their main goals are. Law and order was Congressman Gowdy's, so any sort of law or victims' rights and stuff like that, that was what he was focused on. But make sure not just to meet with that person. I would hit all of them. Hit all of them as often as you can. That's why I'm getting to know staff. In DC, if you are in DC, you will most likely meet with staff unless for some grace of God, they're not in committee and you just happen to catch a senator or a congressman up there. When they're back in the district is a lot easier to meet with them. So I would just get to know staff. Don't think of it as a slight. I know a lot of people told us, I don't want to meet with staff. Why would I want to meet with staff? I want to meet with that individual. And it's hard, I understand, but those people, the staff take everything. They have daily briefings and they will let the congressman or the senator know what is being talked about. So use them to your advantage as well. And be realistic in the ask. I think that's important. If you're wanting $20 million, that's a little out of reach of something. You need to just be realistic and know even small changes are a stepping stone to the big change you want. So if you can ask for the small things and you can keep working with them, you'll get a good working relationship. And then the bigger changes can happen down the road as we see how well the smaller stuff works. Just be realistic and know that you're not going to get the most, especially on the federal level, the most right away, because there's so much back and forth and a lot of stuff going on up there in meetings and all of that. So just be realistic with that. And I spoke with Congressman Gowdy before I did this because I wanted just to make sure, because he would tell people some ideas for other meetings that they would have. And he said something that kind of shocked me, but it totally makes sense. Reach out to them when you don't need anything. Reach out when you just say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. We don't need anything from you right now, but we want you to know that this is all going on. They enjoyed that. He said that was something that he took joy in, is that it wasn't just everybody asking all the time. Just come and just say hello and reach out and just know that they're people. They want to know what's going on too, and it kind of helps them if it's not being bombarded all the time. So those are some main things. Just tell your story. It's a story. If you can weave in personalization to it, that is great. But they listen to all, and it just depends on if something's coming up, if you know, they're willing to talk to anybody. They want to know what you guys have to say, what your needs are, and what is missing from whichever level. And like I said, I did these meetings with the mayor of Inman. These things you can use on any level, is just know what you're talking about, be succinct, do your top 3, bring your small group with a personalization story, and just get to know staff, and just those are the main things, and your meetings will go great, and become friends with them. They want to get to know people in the district. So that would be what I would leave you with. So, and I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has them as well.
Thank you so much, Missy. We really appreciate that. I want to just circle back, excuse me, I want to just circle back to something both you mentioned and Representative Henderson-Myers mentioned, and I think this is so important. I think a lot of times we, as voters, as constituents, sort of feel like we have to be the expert in the room in order to voice an opinion about a topic. And I think sometimes we forget we have citizen legislators. They oftentimes they are as much an expert as we are. And so if we are not bringing information to them, if we're not sharing information or pointing them to the subject matter experts, the people with the loudest voice are going to get there first. And so wouldn't you rather bring some facts and share some information that's been vetted, as opposed to just letting the winds of whatever post may be most popular on Facebook this week be what is the loudest voice in your representative's ear?
And if you don't speak up for yourself, they might not know that there's an issue. They're focused on what is coming in front of their plate. And if whatever you're advocating for isn't in front of their face, they might not know it's an issue. That's why we like to get, when a new bill was coming out, if people read through it, people like an attorney that deals, like Andrea with community issues, looks through it, they can read a 20-page bill and not realize, oh, this 1 or 2 lines can make or break a family. They're not going to know that. Whoever's on the ground floor, who's doing the hard work, those are the people who know, hey, this could drastically affect families. It could drastically affect the finances of people, or the health care of people. And he wouldn't know that. The bill overall looks great, but those 1 or 2 things. So read up on anything that affects any major issue that you're working on, and dive deep and see, well, will all of this work? And if not, set those meetings. I mean, I'm telling you, they're there in the office or close by every day, and at least get a staff member on the phone and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm here with United Way. We've read through this. These are the issues that we see with it. And that, get it before it starts rolling, because once it starts rolling, you know, it gets tough. So just keep an eye out, and they might not know it's an issue, and they're not experts on on everything. So yes, if you have something, speak up. That's definitely a thing.
And Missy, did you ever have times when someone said, oh, we want to have a meeting about this issue, and initially you're like, I don't know that that's really like in the congressman's wheelhouse, but when they brought the issue forward, all of a sudden they were making those connections, and it brought a different perspective?
Yes, even though it might not be in the congressional, but in the congressman or senator's wheelhouse, they have staff that covers all the different committees and what is going in and out. So if somebody called, say, I'm just going to make it up, playgrounds were a thing. Congressman Gowdy doesn't know anything about a playground, but we have a staff person that is on it and is looking at that legislation. There's always someone who knows at least something about it in the office. Reach out to the local staff, say, is there anyone in your office or the DC office that has an idea about what this might look like, and can I speak with them? Because if you speak with those people first, then it bubbles up and they can say, oh, I had this meeting with Heather and she said that this playground is going to be awful for children and this is why. And then that will get passed on. I mean, it's a foolish example, but yes, just reach out. Even if you don't think it's in, that's what they're there for. They're there to serve you. You should be able to get your voice heard, and you will. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, bull moose, whatever they are, all are out there. The staff there, we never ask a question. Okay, well, did you vote for Congressman? No? Okay. That's not the thing, and they're not legally allowed to do that. And if you get pushback because of some reason like that, you have a leg to stand on, and it's not right. So don't worry if you think it's something completely out of left field for your congressman or your senator. Speak up. Speak up, because that's who is supposed to be serving you, and they will listen.
Well, thank you so much. I am checking the chat and the Q&A, and I am not seeing anything right now. So with that, we're going to switch gears just slightly. I'm going to share with you some information that you can take out of this meeting and share with your elected officials. You can also share it with your friends and family, because I guarantee they probably don't know about as much about it as you think they do either. So let me switch over here. I'm actually going to share my screen. And fun fact, I live in a place that has rural broadband. So that means once I start sharing my screen, I'm going to turn off my video, sorry, to make sure that you can actually hear me and that I don't get kicked out of the meeting. So as all of you are aware, because this is definitely a group that is well acquainted with United Way, our focus areas are health, education, and financial stability. And, you know, particularly for our Women United members, we know that they are especially focused on preventing that cliff effect, that catastrophic financial impact of losing the public benefits when you take a slightly higher paying job or a raise on the job. So with that in mind, these are a few things that are coming up. You heard Representative Henderson-Myers mentioned that the General Assembly is headed back to meet in September. The primary focus of that meeting will be budget, 100%, as it should be. However, there are a few things that we know are probably going to be talked about that could use a little bit of amplification through your voices. So many of you may remember that when COVID initially started, the General Assembly worked with the South Carolina Attorney General to pass a moratorium on evictions in South Carolina. That has expired, and unfortunately, as well-intentioned as that moratorium was, it was very optimistic. Everyone thought we'd be done with this by summer. And, here we are in mid-August, still, in the midst of COVID-19. And so we are asking that our state officials consider reauthorizing that state eviction protection, primarily because we know that affordable housing is already an issue in our state. We want to prevent a homelessness epidemic as families and businesses seek to recover from those longer-term COVID-19 impacts. If you are not quite sure how you feel about that, or that feels a little risky to you, I have two other things that are not risky at all. There is large bipartisan support for reauthorizing nonprofit raffles. In fact, this was almost passed during the regular session, but COVID-19 just interrupted enough that this got knocked off the table in favor of focusing on more urgent needs. So this allows nonprofits to hold raffles for fundraising events. There is a bill in the Senate, there's a bill in the House, there's a bill that's already made crossover. So this is something that would be very simple and requires a mere matter of a vote in order to pass and get to the governor, and would help nonprofits have more options for fundraising, especially as they're looking at virtual fundraising options now. And then, of course, everyone agrees that prioritizing broadband expansion is absolutely essential, that our businesses, our college students, our healthcare providers, patients all need access across the state. And I know that our legislators are working on this. I've not heard anyone say they oppose broadband expansion. The question is really more of how and who will lead the charge. And so just expressing how broadband expansion would impact you or your business or the people in your life will be beneficial to helping make sure that that remains a priority and that we continue to see movement and we don't get bogged down in the details, which can sometimes happen when we're proposing something kind of big and new. At the federal level, really two very simple things. There is a nonprofit community letter that we will include in the follow-up to this webinar that really just asks both houses of Congress to support and strengthen the nonprofit safety net. There are kind of two key things in there: extending emergency funding programs, so that would be things like payroll protection program, the Main Street lending program to allow nonprofits to continue to survive, and then strengthening charitable giving incentives. Senator Scott is an amazing proponent for our nonprofit community here in South Carolina. We're incredibly fortunate to have him. And he really helped pass a $300 charitable deduction as part of the CARES Act. And so we're just asking that both houses of Congress make sure that that remains in effect through the end of the year, and even consider extending it or expanding it to further incentivize some charitable giving to help keep nonprofits alive. And then if you've watched the news at all lately, you have heard that the Census Bureau is now talking about ending their in-person count at the end of September as opposed to the end of October. Congress has the authority to legislatively extend the deadline for the Census Bureau, which would relieve some of the pressure that they're feeling to wrap this up quickly by giving them a legislative deadline. And as you heard Representative Henderson-Myers say, this census is a big deal. Census not only impacts redistricting and the drawing of those district lines, but it also impacts where businesses are located and the investment that that is put into things like marketing and roads improvement and where schools are built. So this census really impacts all of us. And so by encouraging Congress to strengthen the Census Bureau's ability to complete a full count, we are really strengthening all of our communities. Now, if you're not sure are, because South Carolina does have a lot of state districts, you can go to the South Carolina State House website. It's just scstatehouse.gov/legislators search. And you type in your home address. Please make sure you type in your home address. You don't vote based on your business address, so it will not pull up the right information. And this will tell you who your state and US legislators are. This is really useful information, and straight off this website, you can click into your state legislators' bio page. You can find information about where they went to school, what committees they serve on, what bills they've introduced, their contact information, and all those details that both Missy and Representative Henderson-Myers were saying are so important to know who you're speaking to. And finally, you can take action. So we are have just launched our Advocacy Alert newsletter. This will provide information on a monthly basis about ways that you can use your voice to continue to fight for the opportunity for everyone in our community to thrive. We right now are really focusing on census and voter registration. So that's United We Count, United We Vote. And that's a national campaign with United Way worldwide and United Ways across the country. But that email newsletter is brief. We only send it once a month, and then only in between those times in cases of emergencies when we have something really urgent that we need your voice on. So if you'd like to participate in that, I really encourage you to sign up. You can, right now, we thought this was going to be live today, and unfortunately we've had a little bit of a technical issue. So right now, the best way to sign up for that is to email me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat so that everyone has it in case you need it. And with that, I just want to let everyone know that the Women United Advisory Board is working on creating a schedule for the remainder of the year. And so you will absolutely be getting some more information from Andrea and Maria about Women United events coming up. This is officially the last event in our Cliff Effect series, where it's kind of bittersweet. It's been a really insightful educational process for all of us who've participated, and I hope that you have found it insightful as well. I'm going to drop my email here into the chat real fast, but I just want to pause and see if there are any last questions. Thank you, Teresa. So does anyone know if Medicaid is being addressed in South Carolina? And Teresa, I'm going to assume that by that you mean Medicaid expansion. And the short version is not really. That's a hard issue to talk about. I'll be very honest with you. It can tend to be very polarizing. People tend to have pretty strong opinions on Medicaid expansion. As of right now, I haven't seen anything at the state level that would indicate that our General Assembly is looking at expanding Medicaid. However, COVID has seen some things happen that I would have sworn would never have happened. So I won't say never, but I think we have to be aware that that has fiscal impacts as well as political ones. So you know, it's not simply a matter of what we might believe is right or necessary, but there's also a lot of regulation and kind of historical baggage that are attached to the idea of Medicaid expansion. So I will give you my word that I will do a little bit more research on that, and we'll provide some details in the follow-up to this webinar. You're welcome. Are there any other questions? That was a great one. Thank you, Teresa. All right, well, with that, I'm going to give you back 15 minutes in your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. I can't believe it's only Tuesday. I feel like I should be saying have a good weekend, but we still got a couple of days to go. So have a great Tuesday. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for joining us, and we appreciate you all. Hope to hear from you again soon. Goodbye.